A couple years ago, a close friend, Ashley, started a long-distance relationship with a guy, Chris. He has been really good to her, and after meeting in person a few times, they decided to move in together. I was super happy for her as she had a few bad relationships over the years and it was nice to see her in a healthy one. That joy faded the last couple months before she moved a few states over to be with him. The issue isn't her moving, but that she repeatedly joked about having a baby from Chris. At first, I accepted it as jokes, but over time I realized Ashley was serious. For context, Ashley has 2 children from a previous relationship, ages 10 and 12. Chris absolutely doesn't want kids. He told her this at the start, and any time she hinted possibly wanting more, he shot it down, saying it was a deal breaker. Now, Chris is more than willing to accept her children as her own, because he loves her, and after meeting her kids, them as well. He's accepted that they are a package deal with her, and since they are at an age where they are semi-independent, it's not an issue for him. To me, Chris is a real bro for taking on her kids without issue. Hearing Ashley say she wants a baby out of him, one way or another, bothered me to no end. It's hard enough to find a partner that treats you well and accepts children that aren't their own. To find one that does and then talk about plotting to force a baby seems gross and manipulative. Before her move, I had sat down with Ashley, trying to talk sense into her. At first she resisted, but finally it seemed she understood how shitty it would be. After I felt like she had understood, I put the issue behind me and helped support her through the hassle of moving. A few days after she left, I got a call from a mutual friend who delves into the Wiccan / metaphysical realm. She was distraught and confessed to me that shortly before Ashley's move, Ashley had come to her asking for a fertility spell. This friend didn't feel comfortable about it and refused. When pushed, she said she cast a spell for a healthy and honest relationship, but told Ashley it was for fertility. As you can imagine, I was livid. I messaged Ashley, confronting her about what I learned, and she laughed it off as she was desperate, but magic is fake anyway. So what's the harm? She then let it slip that since Chris was planning on getting a vasectomy in a few months, she had poked holes in their condoms as a last-ditch effort. At that point, I couldn't stay silent. I gathered up screenshots of all the conversations over the last few months and sent them to Chris. He understandably freaked out and kicked her out. Now, Ashley hates me because she was kicked out after a huge move and didn't have a job or money to make it back. She said I'm a terrible person for putting her and her kids out on the street. I have a home daycare. I like to think I'm pretty lenient, but I do have one big rule: don't make me the bad guy. I understand we might have different rules, but don't make your child resent me by not backing me up. Anyway, another rule is I don't allow outside toys or electronics. Kids can bring the stuffed animals for nap if they're sleeping on rest mats, but I don't want to be responsible if something gets broken. Years ago, I used to let kids bring whatever. Then a cheap McDonald's toy broke by accident, kid was upset and mom got mad at me. So now it's a hard rule. Most are okay with it. But I have a new kid, whose mom wanted him to bring his tablet because he needs it. I said sorry, but no. I'm not going to be responsible for it. We went back and forth, but finally she just says fine. But every morning, he's crying because she took his tablet from him in the car. She always gives me this look and says, "Miss Lucy says no tablet." I always try to say we have plenty of toys, but the kid spends the whole morning sulking. I've talked to mom, asked her to leave it at home and not even put it in the car, but she says he needs it. It's been a month and yesterday was the straw that broke the camel's back. Kid came in crying as usual. I tried my usual redirection, which didn't work. Mom was giving me a look of, "See what you did?" Then she had the nerve to say to him, "I know you need your tablet, we've talked about this before, Miss Lucy is strict." That pissed me off. I ended up telling her to take him home right then and there. She was shocked and tried to stammer. He was my first kid of the day, so there was no scene. I just handed back his backpack, said he was no longer a student of mine, and began to pack his extra clothes and the sippy cup he kept. Mom was in tears as she left. My husband thinks she was right. I'm too strict and should have broken policy instead of causing drama. There was no medical need for the tablet. It was all just that he wanted it. I'm not making a waiver for electronics. That won't stop other issues with the tablets, such as jealousy and drama, so my "don't make me the bad guy" rule has been misunderstood, partly as I worded it poorly. I don't expect blind obedience. No one has to agree with my rules. They can challenge them, to me. But to their kid, I'd rather them explain everyone has different rules and that while they're with me, things will be different. I do the same with parents who have different rules than mine. I never say they're wrong or strict. I say that we have different rules at school and to listen to mom and dad. This is also a policy for pacifiers, bottles, and potty training. I'll approach any of these milestones when you ask, but you have to be working on it at home too. The kid won't progress if they only go pee on the potty at home. And the child was not autistic or non-verbal. If he was, an exception would be made. I returned her money for the last few days of January and texted an apology for terminating without notice, and said I hope she was able to find care. She said she left him at her mom's. She also asked if there was any way I'd reconsider, and I said no. We had a long phone call and no minds were changed, but it was the ending we should have had. I got pregnant with my daughter Emma at 18. I lived at home and was going to college and working. When I got pregnant, my parents kicked me out and I had to move in with my ex. I dropped out of school and quit my job to take care of Emma because my ex told me he would support me. When I was 22, he was 24, he graduated law school. He told me I had to move out because he wanted to find a wife. My parents had forgiven me, so I moved in with them. We didn't have a court order, but we split custody pretty much 25/75 with me having more time. When Emma was 6, he married his now wife. She couldn't have any more kids and wanted Emma and her daughter to be sisters. Over the next 3 years, Emma spent less and less time with me. She'd throw a fit if I tried to pick her up. They gave her things I couldn't. When she was 8, she told me she hated me. I never blamed her for the lies her father put in her head, because even though I lived at home, I was in college and working and did my best to provide her for her, but obviously they could do more. They took me to court when she was 10 and surprise, the lawyer and his doctor wife with their $1 million home beat me in court. They painted me out to be this horrible parent and Emma backed them up. They got primary custody and I got visitation. But Emma refused to see me. I gave her money and gifts. But she didn't want me in her life. When I was 30, I met my husband. He is the most amazing man I have ever met. He's seen me struggle with this and been very supportive. He has a daughter Emma's age and a son who is 5 years younger. They lost their mom and were very welcoming and loving. They treated me like their mom. Emma made 0 efforts to get to know my husband and stepkids. Emma and stepdaughter just graduated high school this past May. And my parents also recently passed and gave me their estate since I am an only child. I have decided to pay for my stepdaughter's entire college tuition and buy her a car, pay for an apartment. Emma contacted me a week ago and told me she missed me and wanted to see me. This shocked me, seeing as we haven't talked in a year. We met up and she told me she heard my parents died and asked if she could have some money to pay for college. I was shocked and said, "Well, what about your dad and his wife?" She said, "My mom and dad want me to pay for this on my own to teach me responsibility, and I believe I am entitled to money. Seeing as you ruined my life," I was very hurt and told her, after years of ignoring me and telling me I am not your mother, you demand money from me. I am not your wallet. My husband is telling me what I did was right, but my ex is telling me I'm a piece of shit and I owe this to her. My stepdaughter feels bad and offered her college money because my daughter and her friends have been harassing her. I said absolutely not, that is your money. So I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So, in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single-family house, there isn't much soundproofing. And the floors creak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 a.m. since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovelas till midnight, taking work calls all day and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls. So I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, When my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place. He wanted to go speak to them or have me text them, and I said no. For example, one of the early times he stayed over, we went to bed around 10. He wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in, and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their life, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot young 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 22-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is a normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it. And I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone with house kinda money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it. And even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, "Okay, boomer." Or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house in the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 to drive me to his house. Then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, "Okay, boomer," to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age. It's more of a mindset thing. I googled his property records for his house and he co-owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit. I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I'm honestly freaking out right now, but I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went.